The stars were silent. A small colony floated on the edge of the galaxy, far from the protection of any great power. For generations, these people had lived in peace, mining the rocks, farming their fields, and believing the galaxy would never notice them. But one day the silence broke. From the dark came an enemy fleet, vast and merciless, moving like a storm of steel and fire. The colony leaders sent their first call for help. They transmitted to the Galactic Council, to the great empires, to every ally they once thought cared for them. Their voices shook as they pleaded, "We are under attack, we need aid. Please anyone answer." No answer came. The enemy descended. Their ships blackened the skies, their weapons burned through defenses as if they were nothing but paper. Civilians ran into underground shelters. Parents clutched their children, whispering empty promises that safety still existed somewhere. Soldiers fought with old weapons, firing at shadows too fast, too strong, too many. Again, the colony sent their cry, stronger, louder. "We are under siege. Our defenses are failing. Please, help us. Anyone. Please." But the galaxy turned away. The council debated in their shining halls, safe in their distant worlds. Other species closed their ears, not wanting to waste their fleets on what they saw as a small, unimportant outpost. Even old allies, the ones who once swore loyalty, ignored the message. The colony was left to burn. The leaders of the colony gathered in a bunker deep beneath the ground. Their faces were pale, their eyes filled with despair. One elder spoke. "We are forgotten. The galaxy has abandoned us," and for a moment silence ruled. Only the sound of distant explosions shook the earth above them. Outside, the enemy pressed closer. They were not interested in surrender. They were not interested in prisoners. They came only to erase. Entire families huddled together, waiting for the final strike. A mother whispered to her son, "Close your eyes. It will be over soon." But even in despair, they tried one last time. A third message was sent, though the voices on it were weak and broken. It carried across the stars, fragile as a dying breath. "This is our last call. We beg anyone listening, do not let us die in silence." The signal traveled. It passed through empty voids, through ancient networks half forgotten, most ignored, just as before. But somewhere, far beyond the reach of the council, the signal touched ears it was never meant to find. On a quiet ship drifting at the edge of charted space, a human commander stared at the blinking console. The message repeated, desperate and raw. The crew gathered around, listening in silence. They exchanged looks, for they had heard this story too many times. The galaxy abandoned those who were weak. The council pretended to care, but always chose safety over sacrifice. Yet the humans were not the council. The commander's voice was calm, but his eyes burned with something fierce. "Plot a course, prepare the guns. If no one else will answer, then we will." The engines roared to life. The stars bent as the human ship moved, cutting across the void with purpose. Back on the colony, the defenders prepared for the end. Their last shields flickered, their last weapons overheated. The enemy prepared the final strike, a bombardment that would wipe out the shelters and everything inside. Families prayed, lovers held each other tight, and leaders whispered apologies to their people. And then, sensors caught something. At first, they thought it was another enemy ship. A massive signature appeared at the edge of the system, silent but unmistakable. The enemy fleet hesitated, shifting to intercept. The colony's commander squinted at the screen. His heart froze. That is not one of theirs. A single ship drifted forward, black steel gleaming with scars of old battles. No banners, no crest of the council, just a shadow moving through the void. It was human. The colony's breath caught. Whispers spread in the shelters. Humans? Impossible. They are gone. They are myths. But the myth had arrived. The enemy, confident as ever, sent fighters to test this intruder. They swarmed around the human ship, firing their weapons. For a moment, nothing happened. The human ship moved like a silent predator, waiting, watching. Then, the first strike came. A burst of fire so precise, so devastating that entire squadrons vanished before they even realized they were targeted. The colony shook with the explosion. Enemy fleets scattered in shock. And in that moment, for the first time in hours, the people hiding underground felt something they had not felt since the war began. Hope. The humans had come. And they did not come with words. They came with fire. They came with fury. The plea had been answered. The battlefield froze in that single moment. The colony's last defenses were almost gone. The enemy's weapons were ready to strike, but every eye turned to the shadow drifting into the system. A ship of black steel, scarred by wars no one remembered, silent, alone, human. The enemy commander sneered at first. To him, this was nothing more than a relic, an old vessel that wandered too close to its death. He laughed at the thought. One ship against an armada? Let them come. We will crush their bones like dust. But his laughter faded when the first volley fell. The human ship moved with terrifying grace. It did not hesitate. It did not announce itself. Its cannons lit up the dark with sudden brilliance, fire cutting through the void like lightning. The enemy squadrons that swarmed forward were gone in seconds, erased before their commanders even shouted orders. The colony's people hiding underground felt the shockwaves ripple through the earth. Dust fell from the ceilings of their shelters. Children cried out, but this time not in fear, this time in wonder. The defenders, watching from their bunkers, stared at the screens in disbelief. One whispered softly, as if speaking a legend out. How does they fight? They fight for us. The human ship pressed forward, alone against dozens, yet unstoppable. Enemy frigates turned their fire on it, but its shields burned bright, holding against the storm. Every shot it returned was brutal, precise, unrelenting. Enemy cruisers erupted one after another, their explosions painting the stars in fire. Still, the enemy fleet outnumbered them 100 to 1. The enemy commander roared, "Surround it, break it apart!" But as the swarm closed in, space itself seemed to tremble. Another shadow appeared at the edge of the system, then another, and another. The void split with flashes of light as more ships arrived, their drives tearing open the dark. Human warships. They emerged one by one, like wolves gathering to the hunt. Massive dreadnoughts, heavy carriers, sleek destroyers, all scarred, all silent, all carrying the mark of countless forgotten wars. The colony commander could barely breathe. His eyes locked on the screen and his voice cracked as he whispered, "This is not a myth, they are real." The people in the shelters wept in disbelief. Some prayed, some laughed, some shouted in joy. Humans! The humans came! The enemy fleet faltered. Their sensors screamed as the human formation spread, encircling them. For the first time, the hunters felt hunted. The humans did not speak, no warnings, no diplomacy. They simply opened fire. The night lit with fury. Human warships unleashed devastation on a scale the colony had never witnessed. Torpedoes streaked through the void, splitting enemy capital ships in half. Railguns fired slugs with such force that shields shattered like glass. Lasers carved paths through entire wings of fighters. The colony's soldiers, still alive in the bunkers, stared at their screens with open mouths. They had fought with old rifles, hoping only to delay the end. Now they watched the heavens burn as humanity's wrath tore their enemies apart. And in that moment, the galaxy's old stories returned to life. For centuries, whispers had said humans were dangerous, that they had vanished because they could not be controlled, that wherever they went, wars followed. Now the whispers were truth. The enemy tried to retreat. Their formations broke, ships turning desperately to flee. But the humans hunted them without mercy. Like predators reclaiming their ground, they struck with precision, forcing the enemy into chaos. Inside the shelters, families listened as the sound of bombardment grew distant. The earth no longer shook with the enemy's fire. It shook with the thunder of human guns. The children who had been told to close their eyes now opened them wide, their fear replaced with awe. A young soldier, bleeding from his wounds, lifted his head to the sky, visible through a broken hatch. He whispered weakly, They came, when no one else did. Above him, the battle raged, but it was no longer a massacre of the weak. It was a storm, humans against the darkness. At the edge of the battlefield, the human commander stood tall in his ship's command deck. His crew worked silently, each one precise, each one cold. They needed no words. They had done this before. They had answered calls the galaxy ignored. The commander's gaze was steady. He knew the enemy thought themselves untouchable. He knew the Council had abandoned this world. He knew the galaxy watched. And so he gave only one order: burn them all. The fleet obeyed. Fire consumed the stars. The galaxy had forgotten humanity. But humanity had not forgotten how to fight. And on that day, as the flames spread across the void, the galaxy remembered what it had tried so hard to bury. Humanity does not arrive with mercy. Humanity arrives with fire. Humanity arrives with fury. The stars burned. The battlefield, once filled with the enemy's laughter and confidence, had become a graveyard of fire. Human warships moved like predators through the void, their weapons glowing with deadly precision. The enemy, who once marched without fear, now scattered like prey in the dark. From the shelters below, the alien colonists watched the screens in stunned silence. They had expected death. Instead, they were witnessing a storm unlike anything their people had ever seen. The first human dreadnought advanced into the center of the enemy fleet. Its massive cannons glowed, each shot breaking shields and splitting metal apart. The void flashed again and again as explosions rippled across enemy formations. Entire squadrons disappeared in seconds, erased as if they never existed. The colony's commander gripped the table in front of him, whispering to no one in particular. They fight like legends. No, they fight like monsters. And yet, to those who had been abandoned, those monsters were salvation. The enemy commander screamed at his officers, "Stand and fight. They are only humans, nothing but humans." But even his own crew looked at him with fear. For centuries, the galaxy had whispered stories about this species, that they had burned empires, that they had vanished not in defeat, but by choice, that they waited somewhere for the moment to return, and now they had returned. The humans did not give speeches. They sent no warnings. Their message was in every strike, every barrage, every ship that carved through enemy lines. Fire and fury. That was their language. Enemy cruisers tried to regroup, forming a wall of shields, but human torpedoes streaked forward like hunting hounds. The explosions shattered the formation, tearing through the blockade in seconds. Human destroyers followed, darting in close, shredding engines and leaving burning wrecks drifting in the dark. Still, the enemy fought back with everything they had. Bombardments rained on the human fleet, lighting up the void with deadly storms of plasma. One human frigate took the full blast, shields breaking apart, its hull torn open. For a brief moment, the colonists gasped, thinking humanity had finally fallen. But even in death, the frigate struck back. Its final volley fired before it broke apart, its railguns punching holes straight through 3 enemy vessels, dragging them into the abyss with it. The humans did not retreat. They did not mourn. They pushed forward harder. The colony trembled. With every blast, the ground rumbling as if the planet itself recognized the fury in the sky. Families huddled together, whispering the same words over and over. They came. The humans came. And the children, too young to understand war, watched the screens with wide eyes, their fear replaced with wonder. To them, humanity was no longer a myth, it was hope. In the command deck of the lead human ship, the commander stood tall. His voice was low but sharp. Break their center, drive them out, leave none to threaten again. The fleet responded instantly. Human battleships cut into the heart of the enemy formation, tearing apart command ships one by one. The enemy, commander's vessel, shook violently as alarms blared. His crew begged him to retreat, but his pride fought against his fear. "No, we are stronger. We will not run from..." His words ended when a human railgun slug punched through his bridge, splitting the ship into 2 burning halves. His pride vanished with him. Panic spread. The enemy, once the terror of this sector, turned into broken prey. Ships fled in every direction, their formations shattered. But there was no escape. Humanity's fleet spread wide, cutting off retreat, striking down every vessel that tried to run. From the planet below, the colonists could see the sky itself turn red with fire. Each explosion painted the heavens with streaks of light. Each destroyed ship was a reminder that their plea had not been ignored. For hours, the battle raged. But to those watching, it felt like moments. The humans fought with cold precision, like a storm that refused to rest until every last shadow was gone. When at last the final enemy ship exploded, the silence returned. The battlefield drifted with wreckage, glowing embers of destroyed fleets floating like broken stars. The colonists, who had braced themselves for extinction, sat in silence. Tears fell freely, not of despair but of disbelief. They were alive. Against all odds, they were alive. And the reason was clear. Humanity. The lead human ship slowed above the colony, its massive frame casting a shadow over the land below. The colonists stared upward, their hearts pounding. For a long moment, no words were spoken. The humans did not send a message, not yet. They only lingered, silent and watchful, like wolves standing guard over the flock they had saved. To the colonists, that silence said more than any speech. It told them, "You are not forgotten, you are not alone." But across the galaxy, others watched too. Spies and censors carried the images of the battle to distant worlds, to council chambers, to rulers who had chosen silence instead of action. They saw the fire. They saw the fury. They saw humanity return, and they trembled, because they realized a truth they had buried for centuries. Humanity does not forgive. Humanity does not forget. And when humanity comes, they do not come as saviors. They come as fire. They come as fury. Only wreckage drifted among the stars, glowing with fire as if the heavens themselves still burned. The colony below had been saved, but the scars of the fight would not be forgotten. Craters marked the ground, smoke rose from shattered defenses, and families emerged slowly from shelters, blinking in disbelief. They were alive. Against all odds, against abandonment, against betrayal, they still breathed. And high above them, humanity remained. The human fleet did not rush to leave. They stayed in orbit, massive and silent, their shadows stretching across the surface of the planet. Their silence was heavy, not empty. It carried meaning. The colonists looked upward and whispered, "They wait, but for what?" In the council's chambers, far away on glittering worlds, panic spread like wildfire. Reports of the battle raced across the galaxy. The council had seen everything. They had ignored the colony's plea, choosing politics and safety over sacrifice. But humanity had heard the call and answered it with fire. The leaders whispered, among themselves, their voices sharp with fear. They were supposed to be myths. They should not exist anymore. If they have returned, what else do they remember? And in every corner of the galaxy, species who once mocked humanity's name now trembled. For the stories had always said this: humans never forget. Back on the colony, survivors gathered in the ruins of their main hall. Some wept, some prayed, some simply sat in silence, staring at the floor. The colony's commander finally stood, his voice hoarse. "We were abandoned. We called and no one came. Not the council, not our allies, no one." The crowd lowered their heads. Everyone remembered the silence, the unanswered pleas. Then the commander's voice grew sharper. "And yet, the humans came." At those words, murmurs filled the room, some fearful, some awed, some confused. An elder spoke. "Why? Why did they fight for us when others would not?" No one answered. No one knew. Humanity's reasons were their own, but their actions spoke louder than any promise. Above them, the human commander stood inside his ship, watching the colony through the glass of the command deck. His crew waited for orders. One officer finally asked, "Do we send them a message?" The commander's eyes narrowed, his voice calm. Yes, but not just to them. To the entire galaxy. The message was short. It carried no grand speech, no politics. Just a single line broadcast across every channel, every frequency, every world that had ignored the cries of the colony. When you abandon them, we will not. Humanity remembers. The words struck like thunder. In the colony, survivors wept again, not in sorrow, but in release. They were not forgotten. They were not alone. In the council chambers, the leaders sat pale and silent. The message was not just for the abandoned, it was for them. It was a reminder of their failure, their betrayal, and the cost of their cowardice. The cost was trust, and that trust now belonged to humanity. Whispers spread across star systems. Some species cursed the humans as dangerous, reckless, uncontrollable. Others quietly admired them, even feared them because they knew this truth. Humanity fought not for politics, not for power, but for principle, and that made them more dangerous than any empire. In the ruins of the colony, children drew pictures in the dirt of massive ships with burning guns. Parents looked at those drawings and wondered if one day their children would tell stories of humans the way their ancestors once did, half in fear, half in awe. But the adults also remembered who had turned away from them, their supposed allies. The Council. Those who promised unity but delivered silence. The cost of betrayal was clear. They had lost the trust of the people they abandoned. Only the humans had gained it. Night fell on the colony, though few could sleep. Survivors stood outside, staring at the sky where human ships glowed faintly like silent guardians. And though no words came from the fleet, everyone felt it in their bones. The humans had not come only to fight. They had come to send a message. That message was simple. Humanity does not forget. Humanity does not forgive betrayal. And when the galaxy abandons the weak, humanity returns. The colonists would remember this day forever. Not only the day they were saved, but the day the galaxy's order was broken, because the humans had shown what true loyalty looked like, and in doing so they had revealed the galaxy's greatest shame. The fires of battle slowly faded. The colony was safe, though broken. Families climbed out of bunkers, eyes red from smoke and tears, but their hearts alive with something they had almost forgotten. Hope. Above them, the human fleet still hovered, silent shadows against the stars. Every survivor wondered the same thing. Would the humans stay? Would they leave? What would they demand in return? But the humans did not descend to claim rewards. They did not demand resources. They simply waited. On the command deck of the lead human dreadnought, the commander stood at the front window, arms folded, watching the quiet world below. Around him, the crew worked with silent discipline. No one celebrated, no one cheered. Victory to them was not joy, it was duty. Finally, the commander spoke. His voice was calm, but every word carried weight. Send the message. The officer at the console hesitated. To the colony, sir? Or to the council? The commander's gaze was hard. To everyone. The transmission left the ship and raced across the void. It reached the colony first. Survivors gathered around broken consoles and flickering screens as the human symbol appeared. The voice that followed was steady, almost cold, but it carried the force of truth. When the galaxy turns its back, humanity will not. We are not myths. We are not gone. We remember, and we will answer. The word spread outward, faster than light, carried by relays, by spies, by frightened hands eager to pass the message along. It reached the council, where leaders sat in silence, their faces pale as the words echoed through their halls. It reached empires who had once laughed at humanity's name. It reached allies who had betrayed promises. Every world heard it. In the colony, the people fell to their knees. Some wept openly. Others simply raised their faces to the sky. Their commander whispered through trembling lips, "They are not our saviors. They are our reckoning." In the council chambers, whispers turned to arguments, then to silence again. No ruler wanted to admit it, but all of them felt the same fear in their bones. Humanity was back and they had chosen their own path. Not the council's, not anyone else's. For years, the galaxy had believed that humans had disappeared because they were weak. Now they understood the truth. Humans had disappeared because they had no more battles worth fighting. But when one finally came, a cry ignored by all, humanity returned with fire. The cost of betrayal was now clear. The human fleet began to move. Engines glowed as the ships turned, slowly pulling away from the colony. Panic flickered in the survivors' eyes. They did not want their saviors to leave. But the humans were not here to rule, not here to stay. They had done what no one else would, they had answered. Before the fleet jumped to the stars, the humans sent one final line of transmission. Simple, short, unforgettable. When you abandon the helpless, we will be there. Remember that. Always. Then the sky tore with light and the human fleet was gone. The colony stood in silence. Survivors held their children close. Soldiers lowered their broken weapons. And every single one of them knew that their lives had been spared by a species the galaxy had tried to erase from memory. The myth had become reality. Across the stars, that single message spread like fire through dry grass. Some species cursed the humans, calling them dangerous, unstable, a threat to peace. But others whispered in awe, wondering if perhaps true justice had returned with them. And those who had turned away from the colony in its darkest hour, their shame burned the deepest. The galaxy had learned a lesson it would never forget. Humanity does not arrive as saviors. Humanity does not arrive with mercy. When humanity comes, they come with fire. They come with fury. And they come when no one else dares. The stars were quiet once more. But in that silence, the galaxy trembled, because it knew humanity had returned, and they would never ignore a silent plea again.